evening, Flyers fans, and welcome to the return of the Flyers Face-Off podcast show. I'm your host, Kevin Fortier. I am returning from the original show. My co-host, Mike Aceto, who was on the original show as well, will be returning. He is on hiatus for the summer. Hopefully we'll have him back sometime in late July or in August. However, I am very pleased to introduce a couple of special guests I have on the show tonight, and they are very well known to Flyers Twitterverse. Both my guests are affiliated with PhillySportsNetwork.com. First, I want to welcome Jamey Baskow. Jamey, welcome, and tell everyone where they can find you and read your work.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kevin, for introducing me to your viewers. It's an honor to come on this program for you and your dedicated viewers. And, let's go Flyers, baby. You can read my work at PhillySportsNetwork.com, or you can find me on Twitter at Jamey Baskow. Pretty basic. You want some good, honest coverage? That's what we do at Philly Sports Network, and Philly is Flyer, and Flyers face off, and like I said, it's an honor to come on here, and I'm taking my shirt off right now because I can tell you right now I'm pumped. I am absolutely pumped. We'll get into that later, but I'm pretty pumped right now. So,
well, since we're not doing video, since we're not on video, I guess you could also take your pants off if you wanted to, and nobody would know.
Well, we'll talk about that one later. It depends on how the show goes.
Okay. We also have Yariv Wolok on the show. Yariv, jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First of all, Kevin, thank you. I've definitely listened to the show before, especially back in the day. So that's how, we got connected a little bit on Twitter over the years. So really happy to be on here. It's awesome that we get to do this during the off season too, right? Kind of get it out. You can pretty much follow all of us at Philly Sports Network. Highly recommend following every single one of us. We have podcasts. We cover pretty much every Philadelphia sport to an intense level with tons of writers. So highly recommend to everybody. Overall, you can find me mostly on Twitter at YWOLOK. That's pretty much YWolok for every social media page. You can pretty much find me on there. Instagram, Twitter, and all, do my updates through there. I'm usually covering the Flyers games on site, in the press box and into the locker room as well. So that's pretty good stuff. I have some insider kind of coverage there, as well as Jamey, who was talking earlier. You can find us there. And I also do YouTube videos now on Philly Sports Network's YouTube page. Definitely follow us there. There's mostly football content on there, but the Flyers content is kind of starting now with a podcast from Pod Street Bullies, another one of our group of writers, and then myself kind of doing videos. So, look out for those, and I'll have more coming in the summer.
All right, fantastic. So let's take a look at the what we had planned on talking about anyway, just real quick. We had a busy agenda to discuss tonight. So basically, I wanted to just briefly touch on kind of the end of the season wrap up. What were some of the things that we saw from the Flyers this year? What did we like? What didn't we like? We saw obviously the great turnover in the coaching staff, which a lot of us were pulling for. So we've kind of got the new dream team there. The Flyers have a handful of restricted free agents that they need to get signed, and there's a couple of unrestricted free agents they need to figure out what they want to do with. We got the upcoming NHL draft, the need to resolve the number 2C position, which the big news of the day will potentially be filling that role. And then looking ahead, see if the Flyers potentially can bring in a top 4, specifically a right-handed D, to help them shore up on the blue line. However, the big news of the day was that the Flyers traded for the rights to the Winnipeg Jets center Kevin Hayes for a 5th-round pick in the upcoming draft. Now, the big thing is they just need to try to get him signed before going into free agency on July 1st. I will admit Hayes was not my number 1 choice for the 2C slot. I was kind of hoping for more of a speedy, dynamic playmaking type of forward to go in there, add some much needed speed to the attack. maybe trade. One of the ideas that I had was to trade for William Karlsson from Vegas, or maybe Tyler Johnson. The other big free agent out there was obviously Matt Duchene, but he's probably going to be priced out of the Flyers' plans anyway. Yariv, what are your thoughts on the news of the day?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So I kind of agree with you in a lot of ways that he was not my top pick, right, for the offseason. Like the names that you picked, obviously, or the ones that you mentioned earlier, obviously are dynamically, they're more offensive dynamically. They can stick handle a little bit better. They're a little bit faster, a little more of pure point producers. Having said that, over the past 24 hours, I've kind of thought about this quite a bit, right? I'm a little worried about the money that we might give him, specifically more term. He's just the type of player he is. I don't know how effective he'll be in his 30s. So I'm not that interested in giving him, anything above kind of a 4-year deal. I assume we'll probably end up giving him a 5-year deal, and maybe around $6 million or something like that. I'm looking for something a little bit less. However, the more I think about it, he is a dynamic that is really missing on this team. And while the Flyers have size up the middle with Sean Couturier, Nolan Patrick, who is 20 years old, and then Scott Lawton, we really haven't had a player of this size and ability to kind of play down low, and he's not a star player, but a point producer. He really reminds me kind of Keith Primo a little bit. I don't want to put that type of onus on him. I don't think he's going to come in here and be the captain and the pure driver, or even to the same level of point producer, but he still has that same ability, right? He can scoot, he can get on his feet. He's really big. He has pretty much the exact same size as Keith Primo, and really carries a lot of weight around when he plays. You can see a lot of the goals he scores are around the net, deflections, heavy shots. He's just the type of player that can really kind of force the play. So I'm kind of excited about him. I wasn't that excited to begin with, but it's kind of grown on me. It just really depends on term. I'm not that interested in having a $6.5 million third line center, in 4 years from now, which that's kind of where I see him ending up. So hopefully we can sign him for a reasonable deal. But he is a good player, and I do believe he is the type of player that we need. Today, if he's on the roster, we are a more competitive team. We are a more difficult team to play against, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what I was kind of thinking, I certainly wouldn't want to give him more than $6 million. It seems like a lot of people on Twitter are looking at potentially, at least a 6-year deal, which kind of scares me off as well.
Same.
I mean, a 4-year, $5.5 million, I think would be perfect. That I can't see that really happening, though, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. Jamey, what are your thoughts?
I'm thinking that Kevin Hayes could possibly sign for about a 5-year, $5.9 million AAV. I love the signing. Of course, he was on my radar. Of course, like most of all Flyers Twitter and all, Flyers beat reporters and whatnot, we were all reporting that the Flyers would be interested in Kevin Hayes. I love this. I love how Fletcher gambled to trade for his rights, and that showed me a lot about Chuck Fletcher, that he's willing to, beat the pack. He didn't want to, go against bidders and up the price to $7 or $8 million per year, maybe even more towards $9. Because this isn't. I'm going to be honest. This free agency market is lacking. It lacks, the big names for 2Cs. It lacks the big names for, free agent defensemen and stuff. So you're going to see lots of teams overpay. Like Matt Duchene, he's probably going to get like $12 million, I think now.
Wow.
He's the big name on the market. I could see it happening. I'm not saying that's what he's going to get, but teams are going to overpay now because the market it just isn't there. So I like Kevin Hayes for a reason. The Flyers, not only for his big body, down the middle, because I think that's what the Flyers have been lacking, for years. Their only other center that's over 200 pounds is Sean Couturier at 214. So to get a Kevin Hayes, at 220 and he's 6'5", I mean, I think that's a steal. But I like him because they didn't have a voice in the locker room last year. That voice was lacking, and it was lacking. It was just, you could ask Yariv, sometimes you could hear a pin drop in that locker room. I don't know what was going on in terms of leadership in that locker room last year. So you get a coach in there, but Alain Vigneault, obviously. Hayes is familiar with Vigneault. Who better to be that voice in the locker room to assist these players for a Vigneault system than Kevin Hayes. And
Good
I
point.
think that's one reason. I think that's one reason why he was on, not only Vigneault's, to the forefront, but on Chuck Fletcher's, forefront. And I think that's why he made that gamble yesterday, trading for his rights, because Hayes has a lot of respect for Vigneault, and Vigneault has a lot of respect for Hayes. And I think Vigneault is going to look to Kevin Hayes and say, hey, can you aid me in this locker room? Because he can't be there 24/7, but Kevin Hayes can. And Kevin Hayes knows that system well. He had a 25-goal season, in 2017-18, under Vigneault. This guy can score. I think there's a lot of untapped potential with Kevin Hayes in terms of scoring. I think he's going to be that 2C. He's a stopgap center until Nolan Patrick is ready, like Yariv hinted on. My thing is that the expansion draft is looming. So if they see how Nolan Patrick grows this year, next year they could unprotect that. In the 2020 expansion draft, they could unprotect Kevin Hayes, thus exposing maybe a Jake, getting rid of one of these contracts or a JVR or something. So I think that's in the back of Fletcher's mind as well. I think Fletcher did well. The Flyers fans were a little pessimistic on Chuck Fletcher heading into this offseason. Oh, he's not going to do nothing. He's not going to do this. He's not going to do that. But yet he made a ballsy move going after Hayes yesterday. And I'm going to be honest. I fell asleep on my couch, thinking that nothing was going to go. I'm looking all day, for a signing of like maybe Ivan Provorov or Ryan Hartman at the very least, or something, someone easy. But, and then to get this for the, trade for his rights. I just wanted to make one other point. They could speak. I'm not worried right now about Kevin Hayes signing up until June 23rd. June 23rd is when other teams can but deals won't become official until July 1st. But teams can start talking to unrestricted free agents beginning June 23rd.
Right.
There's a leadway here. What do we got? 19 days until that time. So Chuck Fletcher, the ball's in his court right now.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely brought up some good points there. And, one of the key things, which a lot of people loop back to, was the fact that he did play under Vigneault for 4 seasons. So to your point, they know each other, they have respect for each other, and he could certainly help usher in whatever system Vigneault is going to set up. And that's been one of the things, and I know we've talked about that a lot, Jamey, is the fact that the Flyers have just been completely lack of any type of a system on the ice. You look at the most successful teams, and you mention the name, and you know what they're gonna, you know what their style is, right? And the Flyers, and I mean, I was probably the biggest detractor on Hackstall. I hated him from day one. I remember. And that was one of my biggest pet peeves. Is like he never did any. He didn't have anything going on the ice. He had no system. He even admitted he didn't really do a lot of the last change and all that stuff. And when he was on the road, he wasn't sure about some of these things. And it just seemed like he just kind of fell back into these various things and relying on has-been vets, et cetera. But anyway, they had no system. I see, the points about getting a bigger guy, battling down low, et cetera. I was looking for a little bit more speed, but, if they go a little bit different style there. The other thing that Isaiah from O&B brought up a lot with Hayes was, he's a real specialist on the penalty kill, which has been, that's been the Flyers.
The Flyers have needed help in that area for years, and he could help immensely in that area. Not only that, but he could be a scoring threat as well.
Exactly.
That he's not the fastest skater, but the guy is strong on his skates, and he's got that push, and he could lead the charge up the ice for, and they could alleviate Claude Giroux in this area now. And I think that's a big thing is the wear and tear on Claude Giroux. They might not have to use him on the PK now. I would start using Nolan Patrick on the PK now with the addition of Hayes. And I'll tell you, I think Hayes and Patrick can make a really nice tandem.
It would make sense that, that's something else I've mentioned before. It would make sense to start using Patrick on the PK, start working on some of those skills that are there. I mean, he's already he does really well on the faceoffs. I think he was around 55% or something like that for the year. And even last year he was above 50%. So he's strong on the faceoffs.
Definitely.
Get in there, the attack, the forecheck, etc. Yeah, you want to kind of wrap up on this topic a little bit, Yariv?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to add something that, well, one, I totally agree with what you guys are saying as far as the PK. This is, again, I had an article about this come out the other day and a video about it as well. Kind of defining a core. Third line center is kind of key. That's what I was saying. Kevin Hayes, in my mind, is a high-end third line center. So for us, he's a number 2. Hopefully Patrick can surpass him. But I do see him taking a big brunt of that weight of the PK, not just off of the rest of the team, but also Sean Couturier, right? We use him intensely as a very physical role, but he's clearly more than that. Now Kevin Hayes can take some of that brunt of that weight. So it'd be great to see that distributed. And not only that, right, one thing I have not heard mentioned a lot, I've heard this mentioned that, it's great that Fletcher went out and kind of stepped ahead and brought in Hayes, right? Get ahead of the game, only give up a 5th, right? We have a deep prospect pool. We really don't need a 5th round pick that bad. So for us, it's a big win. The one thing I've heard people kind of get upset that it kind of shows that we're not that dedicated to sign Provorov and everybody else, right? Those RFAs. I actually don't see it that way. I actually think this is a very strong, aggressive move to sign your RFAs, right? You have a big question heading into this offseason, right? You have a certain amount of cap space, and you have all these kids that you need to sign. You don't know what the market is going to be like in a few weeks from now. That is a risk. This is probably your biggest need as third line center, right? So take care of it now, and then you know exactly where your budget is, right? And that way you know early, as fast as possible. It'll help you make those decisions, help you get those kids signed quicker, right? So it's actually a pretty aggressive move as far as the other steps that follow those, right? So getting Kevin Hayes allows us to sign Konechny, sign Provorov, sign Sanheim, and know that, hey, we don't have to go out and spend $9 million on a center, right? Because we couldn't find anybody else.
That's a good perspective. I like that.
There's a lot of steps that I think people, we look at things a lot of times on the surface level, right? Like a guy like Kevin Hayes. But again, this is a full team. And in my opinion, you cannot win a championship with a handful of players. You can go out and trade. I heard a ridiculous trade thought the other day. It was Voracek, Sanheim, 2 firsts, and a goalie prospect for Marner. Okay, I understand. Mitch Marner is amazing. Do not get me wrong. Getting one elite scorer is not going to turn you into a cup contender. It's just not going to happen. You need a deep team. Look at the teams that are in the finals. None of those teams have the best player in the league. I mean, I guess you can make an argument with Boston, right? They have that top line, but they're just good all around. They have the elite talent, but they're balanced and deep. And that is the way you win championships. We don't have to go out and get Connor McDavid, right? We just need a team that's balanced and strong all the way through. And not just that, and I'm sure we're going to get to this in a second, but, the coaching. The coaching matters a lot. The system, like you were saying, the system matters. We did not play a strong system. For several years now, we are prone to mistakes, prone to bad penalties. That you can't win cups like that. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. A team like Boston tries to play a perfect game every night, right? That should be our goal, is to play a perfect game. Yeah, that's how you win.
Year after year after year, we've seen the Flyers, basically lead the league in giving up the first goal, ending the first period down, not scoring in the first period. I mean, it's crazy. They dig themselves into a hole night after night after night, and they don't have, like you were saying, they don't have the system in place. They don't roll 4 valid lines. I mean, they barely roll 3, decent lines. And then, they have garbage on the 4th line, and they think that they're going to win that way. And it's just not going to happen. I do want to get on the coaches. Jamey, did you have anything you wanted to just wrap up real quick on this?
Yeah, I just, I think this, I just think in terms of what Yariv was saying, I just think the team lacks identity. And I think that Kevin Hayes will bring, that to the forefront in terms of a voice. I mean, this team has lacked a voice in the locker room, and I think that's one reason why they lack, an identity. The past, 3 or 4 seasons that, I've been through the locker room and stuff like that. They just need that voice, and I'm hoping that Kevin Hayes could be one voice in the locker room next year to aid Sean Couturier. I think Couturier is going to take on a bigger role, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say in terms of that.
Okay. Yeah. So let's. The next thing I wanted to look at, and this rolls right into this nicely, and I have to say this is something that I am really excited about. Is I've been calling them, people have been laughing at me, but I've been calling them the Dream Team on Twitter. But the fact that they went out and they got a legit successful NHL head coach in Alain Vigneault, and then augmented him by bringing in Michel Therrien and Mike Yeo, who both have been successful. Not as successful, but have been good NHL coaches to really work on getting that identity, getting the communication, the working between the coach and the players, and so I believe Michel Therrien is going to be working. He's going to be coaching the power play. Yao is going to be coaching the penalty kill. So we get rid of Lapierre, and Chris Knobloch. He didn't really do much of anything. I think he was kind of invisible for the most part. On the power play. And both of the PK has just been horrid ever since Lapierre had been coaching it, and hopefully with these successful guys, they're going to work together with Vigneault to really bring some success to the team. Yariv, what do you think?
So I agree with a lot of what you said. So I think I'm actually growing fan of Alain Vigneault. Now, I never had anything against the guy. I actually see him as another Peter Laviolette in a lot of ways. He's kind of cool, smooth talking, has an offensive game, history of success, history in going to the finals, probably bring a big personality locker room. Great hire, in my opinion. And I also think Dave Tippett was actually my first choice, but now that he's been hired in Edmonton after the fact, AV was signed with the Flyers, right? And we brought him in on this kind of really big contract. Seemed to me like Fletcher really wanted Alain Vigneault. So right off the bat, I like that. I like the confidence. That makes me happy. And like you said, he has a great resume, in my opinion. I don't think you have to be a cup winner to have a great resume. He's had success over and over again. In my opinion, got New York team to overachieve because I don't think that they were as great as they played. I think the Vancouver team showed a lot of success with young players and veterans, which I thought was great. He kind of built that team over time. And kept them to be a really fun, interesting team, high-scoring team, really important. The assistant coaches, now those are interesting, right? Like LaPerriere, I know he's out, right? Gordon's out, Wilson's out, Knobloch. LaPerriere will be up in the box, so he's going to still help. He's actually really great with players as far as personality, motivation, stuff like that. Systems probably needed somebody a little more technical, so they brought in Yeo and Therrien. So Yeo, I don't believe is a head coach, at least from his personality. I think that's why he kind of failed in St. Louis. I don't think it's a problem of knowledge. I think he has that in spade. He actually seems highly intelligent. It's really just you're leading a room of alpha males. There are just certain nuances that you have to go through. And I think a guy like Vigneault, again, he seems more of kind of like a leader by style. People will probably just follow him off the fact that he's calm, cool, and collected almost under any situation. Michel Therrien, now he is, let's put it this way, he is the only coach in the league that I am not a fan of. Now that is pretty harsh because like Craig Berube, I wasn't the biggest fan of, obviously proved everybody wrong, right? He's doing a great job. I wasn't a fan in the sense that I didn't think he was that effective with the Flyers. Personality-wise, I had nothing against him. Michel Therrien, I am a little bit worried. I only know what I've heard. I know what I've watched. I know he can make excuses for his problems. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. He seems kind of, let's just call him a hard ass, right? To put it nicely. However, having said that, while I don't have that much faith in Michel Therrien, and personally would not have been my choice, it's quite clear that him and Vigneault have a relationship from the past. He brought him especially. And I believe the reason is because Therrien is a hard ass. Now, within the three of them, Yeo is not, Vigneault is cool, Michel Therrien's a hard ass. So within there, you might have the right balance, right? And then you have LaPerriere, who knows all the players, younger, been part of the system. The idea is maybe to have a balance of personalities where maybe Therrien can be a little harsher, Vigneault can kind of lead by vision, and Yo can kind of soften the blow along with the Perrier of Therrien's kind of critical feedback. Again, if he's not leading the room always, it should be fine. I do worry about him spreading, all over the team, because I believe he does tend to get really frustrated with players. And like you said earlier, our players tend to make a lot of mistakes, especially the young ones. It's going to be interesting. I do think it's the right balance, though. And I love the aggressive push to bring in a slew of talent, right, as far from a coaching standpoint. Not wait, not bring in any question marks. Just bring in people who know the system, know the league, know what it takes to win in the league, have been head coaches. Like I said, the balance, right? The balance is kind of key there. So I'm excited about it. I really am. And I think the opportunity is definitely there to kind of wake up the Flyers, even with the current core they have right now, and not necessarily have to, I know there's going to be some changes, but even the coaching changes alone, I expect the team to play different, right? I expect the power play to be different, expect the penalty kill to be different, expect the system to be different. So there's a lot to look forward to, even just on that surface level. And I do believe that Alain Vigneault was the right hire.
Yeah, well, I was always a huge fan of Mike Keenan, so I'm okay with having a hard ass in there, because there has been too many excuses especially for some of the core guys, the high end players who just weren't getting it done. So if they get banged on a little bit, I don't have a problem with that.
Right? I think that's the thought, right? But then look at Keenan, right? He had a short lifespan,
as
well, right? So that's why you have to be careful with that. But again, he's not the head coach, and that's important to pay attention to here. Yep. You can be a tough guy and be reasonable, and that can be okay, right? And that's why I try not to be too harsh on Therrien, right? Just based off of media stuff. If he can bring that right element and be the balance that maybe makes people uncomfortable, but the other coaches kind of, are more consistent, that would be okay with me, right?
Yeah, so he'll have the forwards and the power play, and Yo will have the defense and the PK. So Jamey, what are your thoughts?
I love the hiring of Alain Vigneault. I think what Fletcher saw, he saw a team that needed some type of experience behind the bench in terms of getting to the Stanley Cup. Maybe not winning, but at least have a sense of winning. You look at it. I think Fletcher, observed, a team that quit on two of their past coaches that they've had. To me, they quit on Hackstall up until, around December. And we could go to other factors, maybe goaltending and whatnot. But I think that the team overall quit on Hackstall at some point. And the team towards the tail end of the season, the last 4 or 5 games, I'm sorry, but they quit on Scott Gordon. I don't care what anybody says.
They did.
You play until the last game. I don't care. That burned me. That really upset me, at the end of last season when that final game went off and the last 60 minutes went off. I mean, I was infuriated. I was infuriated because he's a player's coach. I don't understand why these players would just quit on him because the season's over. No, the season ain't over. You're playing for positions. I've never seen a team just go, okay, I quit. So they brought in Alain Vigneault, and I see that's probably why Fletcher brought in Michel Therrien. I think he brought him in because they needed a guy, to kick them in the butt. Hey, to keep them straight. Because, in the locker room, I'm sorry, it was a little loosey-goosey, at times throughout the season last year. They started to have fun with, under the first, 18 games under Scott Gordon. The team was having fun again and stuff. And, Nolan Patrick was having a good time. Travis Konecny was having a good time. They would sing all night long, all the time, and stuff like that. But at times, they quit on Gordon.
Why do you think that is, Jamey? I mean, because you're right. I mean, they had from I don't remember the exact date, sometime in early January, or maybe the second week of January on, they had maybe Tampa Bay and St. Louis were the only teams that, had more points going. And then you're right. I mean, they just completely gave up the last 5 games.
I think they were too safe. They knew that they were safe. And when you're too safe and you're too comfortable, what happens? You become too comfortable saying, okay, I ain't going anywhere. These last few games, whatever, they're already checked out, making their vacation plans, for the year and whatnot. Okay, maybe not so many, all of them, because of the world championships and whatnot, but a lot of them already tapped out. They weren't going to go to that extra mile and get injured. And, overall, I just think that they were lacking a system. And to me, the Flyers have lacked a definitive system for the past 5 or 6 seasons.
Yep.
They haven't had an identity. I mean, they're so inconsistent. One night you could pour a ton of goals on and score 6 or 8 goals, and then another night you completely falter and give up, 6 or 7. I mean, they were blown out, just manhandled to the St. Louis Blues twice last year, 3-0 and 7-3, 7-3 in April. That burned me. It burned me because it was towards the beginning of it. It was around April 7th. They're playing for positions, and they got burnt by a St. Louis team that they could have stood up to. There's no reason. I mean, St. Louis is a board battling team. St. Louis is a bigger team. I get it, but it's not like the Flyers are like dead weight there. It was just so disheartening. Even Ryan Hartman, at times looked very inconsistent. It's just, I just don't think that last year was a good year in terms of what happened. Firing Hextall, I think, was a bad move to do mid-season. I think they should have waited until the end of the season to terminate Hextall. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be terminated.
Hextall or Hextall?
Hextall, Ron Hextall.
Oh, okay.
I think that was a bad move overall to do at that particular time. I think that's something that you have to do at the end of the year. I think that was the first move that was made. I think shocked the world because we all thought that Dave Hextall was going to be, dismissed at that time, and here they dismissed Ron Hextall, and they had the reasons, and I backed the Flyers with that. It was time to push. It was time to make that push, and Hextall didn't want to do that. Hextall stood by his guy. He was a little too patient. He made some really good trades, but he was too patient at times. And I just think he should have been given that trade deadline to see what he could do. But that's here nor there. I just think that right there was the mess of the whole season. And you could see the locker room. And I attended the game after Hextall was fired, and Travis Konechny was almost in tears after they lost. They were up 3-1 against Ottawa, and Ottawa came back in the third period, scored 3 third-period goals to beat them in December, 4-3. It was the beginning of December anyway, and I was just like, wow, this team needs something. And it's not surprising to me that they needed a Michel Therrien, that they hired a Michel Therrien, and I think that they brought in Mike Yao to sort of balance out a Michel Therrien. Michel Therrien is the one that scares me the most. His demeanor, I think he's a little too forceful at times, and I don't know how this current core is going to respond to a Michel Therrien, especially one player in particular, Jake Voracek. I'm waiting to see how Voracek is going to respond to him, because Voracek is one of those guys, that knows his role. He's very confident, and he does his job on the ice, but he is very also calm, cool, and collect to himself, in the locker room as well. Like he'll only say what he has to say, and that's it, to the media, and that's pretty much it, And so I want to see how he's going to respond, but he scares me. Therrien scares me, but I think I think Fletcher saw at the end of last year, saw him quit. I think Fletcher already knew that they quit on Hextall, obviously from observing some games before he terminated him, and he saw that the same thing happened to Gordon. And I think that's why you got a Michel Therrien and a Michael Yao in particular, I think, to counterbalance the two. But I think Alain Vigneault, one word that Flyers fans should become accustomed to next year is accountability. If they're not going to hold themselves accountable, I can tell you they won't play. That for a fact, I know. I can tell you that.
It has to be team-wide accountability, too. We can't
that's what I mean.
have this selective accountability like Hextall had,
Right.
He'd hold, Konechny or Ghost accountable, but then he'd let some of these
Brandon Manning. Remember that? Yeah.
Yep. Or Jake. I mean, look, Jake would have a ridiculous, turnovers, blind backhand passes that would get, picked off, and he would never be held accountable. Other guys that, but it was the young guys or meaningless guys that Hextall would hold accountable. All right, so.
Vigneault's pressers, he stated the best player will play. It doesn't matter if he's a vet, there is no age. And that's what I like. So if Jake Voracek has, say, 4 turnovers in a game, he's going to find himself maybe on the bench at some point that game, or be on the bench, next game if he doesn't take it, hey, I need to get better in this area. I need to clean my game up, or something like that. Because Vigneault's a player's coach. He's a player's coach because he's an effective communicator. And that is something that the Flyers have lacked, in terms of head coaches for the past few head coaches that they've had, is effective communication, in particular under Dave Hackstall. I believe every player has to know exactly where they stand, and I don't think they exactly knew where they stood under Dave Hackstall, like a benching of Shane Gothisbehere, erroneous. Even though that might have been the right thing, he should be explained to him why. But you saw Scott Gordon behind the bench talking to the players each time, and stuff. He was an effective communicator, and I think that's where Vigneault is a player's coach, because he effectively communicates, and that's why he gets a lot of respect from his players. Like Travis Konechny, there was a battle between Travis Konechny and Dave Hackstall. Like everyone thought, and myself included at times, thought that maybe Dave Hackstall was a little too hard on Travis Konechny. But in the same token, we're only there for practices and brief synopsises in the locker room. We don't exactly know what's going on behind closed doors. So, I mean, how was their relationship, and stuff? And I think Vigneault comes in and is a very good communicator. And I think that's, a good asset for, this Flyers head coach, to tell you the truth.
So speaking of Konechny, the Flyers have three key restricted free agents that they need to, or four actually, they need to get signed, and everybody pretty much expects them to get signed prior to getting too close up to the free agency period. So obviously Ivan Provorov is the big guy. He's going to be the anchor on the blue line for years to come. They also need to sign the two Travises, Sanheim and Konechny, and then to slightly lesser extent, but still important roles, Scott Laughton and Ryan Hartman. So those are the key restricted free agents that they need to lock down in order to, as both of you guys have been saying, have a full roster out there, to have a system, to have an identity, to be able to roll four lines and 3D pairs. They've got to get these guys in place, get them locked down for the for the foreseeable future, because these guys are going to be the core going forward. So let's start, and we're gonna we'll have to restrict the time a little bit here, just because we've still got some more ground, amount of ground to cover. But as far as Ivan Provorov goes, you got to think he's probably going to get a 6-year term, at a minimum, and he did have a down season. So I've seen a lot of discussions about what the price tag for him might be. I certainly think if they could get him to sign, like maybe a $6.5 million cap hit on a 6-year term, that would be a really good deal for the Flyers to get him locked up. He's going to be the Flyers' number one defenseman, going forward. Jamey, what do you think?
Originally, so Chuck Fletcher and Ivan Provorov's agent had multiple conversations before the season ended. That much I know for a fact. So I am pretty shocked that he is not re-signed today, to be honest. I had credible information that he was going to re-sign before the Worlds ended. Before the Worlds began, excuse me. And he obviously has not. So to me, originally, Kevin, I did agree with you, in which I thought Ivan Provorov would re-sign for a 6, maybe 6.5 to 7 million per. Unfortunately, I think that's the holdup with Ivan Provorov. I think the Flyers want a 6-year contract because it would obviously benefit them in the future. The guy's playing 25 minutes per night. He definitely is worth, whatever, 8, 9, maybe even 10 million, obviously. But of course, this is his first contract, so he's not worth that yet. But a guy that's playing 25 minutes a night should be making in upwards of 8 to 9 million at least. But that's here nor there. I think the holdup is term. I think that Ivan Provorov wants a 3 or 4 year deal, whereas the Flyers want a 6-year deal. So what do the Flyers do? Does Ivan Provorov want to up his AAV, for the 3 or 4 years and say, okay, pay me the $9 million, sign me for 3 or 4, so that'd be a 27 to a $36 million, deal? Or do the Flyers want to do the 6, for 6.5, 7? They could do the 42. So I think in this case that Provorov more or less is looking at a 3 or 4 year deal, as opposed to That's just my opinion. This is just my opinion, but that's the only thing I can make up because I'm kind of shocked he hasn't re-signed yet because I knew that was one of the main players to re-sign, and we heard Chuck Fletcher mention that at the exit interviews that he wanted to get some of these guys under contract as soon as possible. And I think Yariv made a really good point that the RFAs, they're holding out. They traded for Kevin Hayes. Let's shore him up and see what we have for the RFAs. But I think Provy, I'm not concerned about a Travis Konechny re-signing. He'll re-sign eventually. I think he'll sign for maybe, a 4-year, maybe a 4.5 to a $5 million AAV. I think Travis Sanheim would probably be in the same boat, a 4 or 5, I guess he more or less a 4.5, AAV. Justin Bailey, I could see for $850,000 for 1 year. Ryan Hartman, I could see them maybe offering 2 years for, cheap, maybe like a $1.8 million, deal total, $900,000 per season. I don't know. I just think that Ivan Provorov wants a 3 or 4 year deal, and I would not be surprised if he doesn't sign at all.
Yariv, where are you on this?
I have a very different take, Jamey. I apologize. I'm going to probably contradict the majority of what you just said. So I'll start off with one. I do not believe the RFA should be done right now. I know a lot of people do. I don't think it's that quick to negotiate contracts. I would expect this to go pretty much all through the summer for all of them because negotiating usually takes a lot longer. They're going to go to the table with an offer. They come back with another offer. I also don't think the issue with Provorov is term. I think that is 8 years in the Flyers' mind and 8 years in Provorov's mind. I think he wants max term. I think they want max term. He is already the backbone of their defense. I think he was 5th in the league in minutes. The kid is playing 25 minutes a night. I don't think they have any questions that they want to keep him here forever, and I don't think he has any question that he wants to stay here. Worst comes to worst, he asks for a trade, right? Overall, I actually think what's holding up Provorov is money up front. This is actually exactly what happened with William Nylander. People think that it was about average term, but if you look at Nylander's contract, it was structured that he got $8 million the first year cash. Now, this is a lot of things that people don't understand. That's why some players go for different deals, is about bonuses. So in my opinion, I think Provorov wants a large amount of cash up front. And that is what's holding them back, is that between that bonus is probably what's shifting within $1 million there. I think most likely he'll get 7 for 7, 8 for 7, something like that, which is kind of a number one defenseman. I think 9 is a little bit high. If he were to get short term, he would get something less, I would think, because then he would go for that bridge contract, right? He's an RFA. He can't really do that much. At the end of that bridge contract, then he could start asking for 9, 10, probably worth $11 million. So in my opinion, the Flyers have really no question. It's just really about negotiating the money up front. Sanheim might be a bridge type of player, but in my opinion, I think Sanheim, Provorov, Myers, and Ghost already locked up. I think he has 5 years left on his deal, something like that. That's kind of your long-term top 4 core. You have your Haig and your Morin on the bottom, kind of leaking in, and a bunch of other young players, Gudis, right? Amax on his way out. I think they'll all pretty much be signed. I think maybe Konechny would get a bridge because he's kind of a player that could make a huge jump. And he could bank on himself. And in that case, I would personally just lock him up at least 6 years. I see him as already a top 6 forward. I just think it takes time for this type of stuff. I think most RFAs take a lot of time. And right now, the Flyers are kind of worried about what kind of veteran core they'll bring in here. So, again, that's why I think they went with the Hayes, right? Because they already know they're going to sign Provorov. He's not going anywhere. Same with Sanheim. None of these guys are going anywhere, right? The negotiations slightly on term. I've heard a lot of stuff that Provorov could hold out. And again, it would be about that money up front, in my opinion. It was some kind of bonus they'd want today, right? He wants to be rich, but he wants to be rich today, right? He doesn't want to be rich over the next couple of years. He wants to be $8 million right now or something like that, right? What William Nylander asked for. I could see him getting kind of a similar contract to that. If he doesn't get that money up front, maybe that's what he wants, a bridge, right? But I can't see him sitting out. It's absolutely possible. It's possible. I just don't see it happening. I think he wants to play too much. The kid didn't even stop practicing at the end of the season. So I think that stuff just takes time. I think we'll probably see a flurry of signing coming. The finals haven't even quit or haven't even finished. The draft is still upcoming. So there's a lot of stuff here to do, and I think Fletcher kind of is still probably going through his plan. I don't think he knew what he wanted to do as much as we'd like to think that he did, right? I think there's a lot more nuance to what he's doing than we, probably initially thought.
Yeah, I can't see Provorov sitting out either. I also can't see him getting some big, huge, dollar amount on a bridge deal. If the Flyers, I said 6 years, but I have no problem with them locking him up for 8. We'll just have to wait and see. I did read yesterday that Bill Meltzer, had written about the fact that they didn't seem to be getting anywhere with the players' agents, and the agents were kind of, hinting around that they wanted to wait and see how things started shaking out. So that kind of made me worry a little bit about, if they were all going to try to kind of break the bank, but I'm hoping that's not the case. They have such a really strong, core of young players that they could hopefully lock up for, a long time and be, with the Flyers for a long time going forward. So I know when I did my mock roster out on Cap Friendly, I had Konechny sign for 5 years. I had him I think at 5.25. I wouldn't be shocked to see Sanheim sign a bridge deal, maybe sign for 3 or 4 years, 3.5 mils, something in that range. And the other guys, Hartman, Lawton, they're not going to get any kind of like a huge boost or anything like that. I think you're right. Probably $1.5 million or $1.8 million for Hartman. Lawton probably $1.5 million, something like that. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking about for Lawton. I wrote that a few weeks ago, actually. Lawton is a little more respected throughout the league than most people give him credit for. I mean, that guy,
he's good.
He plays. He'll do everything. He'll do anything the coaching staff asks of him. And he does it well. I mean, to me, he was one of the most underrated forwards last season for the Philadelphia Flyers. To be honest, was Scott Lawton. I mean, he does everything well. I was happy that he got off the snide with that goal too. But my one thing is that I give Fletcher a lot of credit for is that he has effectively communicated with players and agents. He touched with a few agents before the season ended, like Provorov's agent, for instance. I don't know how many times they talked. I know they talked a couple of times. They could have talked more, but I mean, in terms of prospects too, like he's talked to Tanner Lazinski, Wade Allison. For the short time he's here, he has done a really good job in terms of communication. One thing that I wish that Fletcher would get better at is bringing Hogberg over and Bernhardt possibly, since our defensive prospect system is sort of lacking at this point. But I guess that's where they touch on that in the draft.
Yeah, well, and you know me, Jamey. I had Tanner Lazinski as my dark horse to make the roster this year. So and then I was kind of disappointed when he decided to go back for his senior year. But I really hope that he ends up being a Flyer next season.
I've interviewed him 3 seasons in a row now. The guy he's a really nice guy, class act, but he is one that I'm telling you that is on the fence of signing with the Philadelphia Flyers. Because he doesn't know where he sees fit. He admitted to me, him and Fletcher have talked multiple times, and they talked about his future. So to me, that leads in, okay, where do I see fit inside this organization?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a Hobie Baker finalist this year if he stays healthy.
He was last year, even though he had an injury-riddled season. He still put up 30 points in 27 games.
Yep.
In 27 games played, and he got hurt twice. And he may have won the Hobie Baker Award if he could have stayed healthy.
Yeah.
He missed almost a month of the season, and he still put up 30 points. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal what he did. But,
so we've got a few minutes left before we need to wrap up here. I did want to touch base on the last need the Flyers have is getting a top 4 right-handed defenseman, hopefully somebody that can move the puck, can skate well, has some speed from the back end, can either get that first pass going or skate the puck out of the zone and help balance out the maybe pairing with Proby on the top pair until maybe Myers is ready to take over that role, because I think he has top pairing potential. So free agents, there's not a lot out there. Obviously, Erik Karlsson, he's going to get just unbelievable, gobs of money thrown at him. So that's just not a realistic option, if you ask me.
Probably.
Tyler Myers is the only other guy. Honestly, I would rather them, they'd have to do the trade route. Jacob Trouba is really high on my list. And the other guy that I've talked about for a while is Colin Miller from Vegas, maybe putting together a package. And actually, I had a bigger package in mind. I wanted to get, Karlsson and Miller out of there, out of Vegas, and bring them over to the Philly. But, if they could get Miller, he's a really good skater. He's underrated. He's got a cannon for a shot. He can get the puck up ice. So that's kind of what I was thinking for them to bring in another defenseman. And it may end up actually, there's a likelihood that it might, especially from a trade perspective, that they might have to move Ghost because, if you look at bringing in somebody, Trouba or somebody to play with Provy, then you've potentially got Sanheim and Myers on the second pair. You can't have Ghost as a third pair guy. And given he's probably going to be a bounce back. You got to think. I mean, because he talked about his injuries not really letting him skate the way he needed to skate, which really held back his offense. And he's on a really cap friendly deal, so they should certainly be able to get a decent return for him. And getting a right-handed defenseman back would help balance out the back end. What do you guys think, Yariv?
Yeah. So I guess my opinion on the UFA thing is a little different than everybody else. Listen, Jacob Trouba is a player I would definitely be interested in. I mean, if you look at my Twitter, I'm definitely arguing against it. However, I am not foolish, right? He is an excellent defenseman. He is young. He is a guy that can be part of your core, part of your top pairing for the future. And sure, he would look fantastic next to Provorov. And I would definitely have conversations about trading for him. No doubt about it. However, I would be satisfied with something simpler in the offseason. Again, I brought this name up a few times. Like even a guy like Anton Strawman, if I could bring him in on a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, something, even if it's 5 years, have him replace what AMAC is doing, right? Like, can we move AMAC? Can we buy him out? I like AMAC's personality, but we need somebody who can really add more to the team on two-way level. I just think eventually, from what I see from the Flyers D, I don't see an issue with Ghost. I know a lot of people do, but playing as a top power play defenseman, when the team plays well, he is incredibly effective at what he does. If he doesn't do it again next year, then I think I'd be more open to kind of moving him. But on his cap hit, I really see no risk to keeping him because you're really not going to get a better bang for your buck, especially if he rebounds. I mean, guys, I think making slightly over $4 million a year and
$4.5. Yeah.
Right, exactly, right, and he's probably going to produce somewhere around 60 points, on a really good season. That is, top of the league. He's capable of doing 70 if the team is on fire, right? It's kind of, if he's on a great team, he'll produce up to that, right? Just like Mike Green, just like a lot of these offensive defensemen, right? Even Erik Karlsson's numbers took a hit when he wasn't the man in San Jose, right? It's about your role too. I like the idea of Trouba. I just don't have any interest in trading Sanheim or trading Myers or trading Ghost, and I think that's what would be required to get him. Maybe the number 11 pick would do the trick, right? But I think they probably would want a guy they could swap. They're just not really in a position to argue, so I would offer them something less because they can't really keep Trouba. So I would go for a steal. Otherwise, I would go simpler. Honestly, I would just try to see what I had next year with the coaching changes. Bring in a better vet than what we have to complement Gudas, right? Gudas is a pretty good vet, but he's just really a bottom pairing defender. But try to bring a guy who's just better and has the leadership qualities and can fulfill that and kind of hope, at least for the beginning, to see what happens with Ghost, Provorov, Myers, Sanheim. And then as we approach, assuming we're competitive, and I do assume we'll be a better team next year, at that point, maybe at the trade deadline is that time to make a move for that, that better veteran, right? To get a guy who's legit top pairing, I would explore all options. Absolutely. So I don't want to say I wouldn't look for a really good young defenseman, even like Colin Miller, right? I would definitely explore all options, especially if teams are desperate and up against the cap. We have that luxury. so we can really make really solid offers for teams. But overall, I'm okay keeping it simpler. I think most of our problems were system-based and execution-based. And if we have kind of a stricter style, right, but also a style that complements everybody, I would wait for that first before I shell out, a lot. Because I don't see a big difference between Travis Sanheim and Jacob Trouba. The difference I see is 4 years. So I'd rather have Sanheim locked down on a safer contract. Because quite frankly, I don't really see how Trouba is going to be better than Sanheim. I think Sanheim probably is more elite offensively, and Trouba is probably a little bit better defensively. But, again, I'm happy with that balance. And then, we got a guy like Phil Myers who, I think the world of this kid. He's physical, offensive. And again, I'm putting a lot on young guys. But if we're going to build a core together, we have to allow them to fail together in a lot of ways. And hopefully we got that out of the way this year. So, maybe I'm being a little optimistic, but that's where I stand right now with that.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is, Myers is the only, puck-moving right-hander they've got on the team.
True.
Gudas is the bottom pair guy. The worry with Strom, I mean, if you bring somebody in to pair with Gudas, there's probably no point in bringing a right-handed guy in, because then you get two right-handers on the bottom pair.
I just meant veteran.
No,
Right?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. And to your point, I mean, that was why I was targeting both Trouba and Miller, is the fact that both Vegas and Vancouver, Vegas and Winnipeg are in cap hell. They can't bring in anybody, that's making, that's on a regular NHL contract, right? They just don't have the money for that. That's why they've got to move Trouba. Look
at the Hayes deal, right? They gave up a first and a second round pick caliber prospect for Hayes, and then they have to give him away for a fifth.
Yep.
Right. They don't have an option, right? Nope. That's what I want to catch teams that way. Sorry,
yes.
Go ahead.
So Jamey, we just got a couple minutes left here. Go ahead and wrap it up for us.
Yeah, a top four defenseman is definitely a need for the Flyers, and that should be their number one priority this offseason. Should have been, a top four defenseman. I like them going after Hayes, so I won't disagree on that front that the 2C took to the forefront, because I had that as my middle pair. But we need a guy that can play minutes with Provorov. We need a guy that can play. I mean, Provorov played 33 minutes in one game. I don't know if Sanheim can do that at his age at this particular time. Sanheim did, tremendous work, paired with Ivan Provorov, but can Sanheim play, the 25, 26, 27 minutes that a top pairing defenseman is going to play at this time? And I just don't think he's there. I don't think he's there just yet. I think he will be there in 1 to 2 years, but I just hate placing these prospects, and I'll call Sanheim still a prospect because he's still young. I just hate placing these people, and Felipe Myers comes to the forefront too, in roles that they're not necessarily ready for yet. I mean, why do we have to put Myers in a top four role? Why do we have to put Travis Sanheim as a top pairing? Why do we continue to do this? The Flyers organization continued to do this time and time again. Look at Nolan Patrick the past 2 years.
Yep.
He was he's second overall pick in the draft, but yet what is he? He's a second line center because he was the second overall pick. Then this past year, he was there because of need. Then they moved him because of Giroux. Then the wear and tear on Giroux, and then they moved him back to 2C. Then he got hurt, and all this stuff. And now he's a 2C. Now, finally, he can be where he is at this time in his development as a 3C. These prospects are so young. We're forgetting that these are kids coming out here. Travis Sanheim, look at him. He's in his early 20s. Look at all these young players. Look at Felipe Myers. He's still young. All these guys. Provorov, he's still young. I mean, they're 21. They're just, that's what they are. They're kids. They're maturing. Let them mature in these certain roles. Not everybody is an Ivan Provorov to where they can just start playing in year 3, 25 minutes.
Patrick should have been on the third line from the day he got there.
No question. No question. And we all saw it, but unfortunately the Flyers had no other choice but to put him in there because they had nobody else to put there. And that's what I mean. So now, I agree with Yariv bringing in a stopgap guy if all else fails with Anton Strawman. I like him because you could probably get him for cheap, and Tampa can't re-sign everybody, so they got Braden Point to deal with right now. So they might be focusing on Braden Point to where they're forgetting about Anton Strawman, here shortly. So I agree. I want Jakob Trouba. I think Trouba is that guy that can play 27, 28 minutes per night. No questions asked. I mean, he's still young. and you pay him. Yeah, he's going to command money. He'll probably command anywhere from upwards $7.5 to $9 million. But given term, I'm assuming it'd probably be a 6 or 7 year term. I understand. But sometimes you got to give. You just have to give. And this to me is the biggest. This is the most critical off season. And I want Fletcher to nail it. But in the same token, I don't want to have to overpay. So where does that leave me? That leaves me with Colin Miller from the Vegas Golden Knights. If we cannot steal Trouba, so when we're thinking about Trouba, are you trading for his rights or are you trading for him? Because it's a little different. If you're trading for his rights, Yariv is right. You could possibly give just the 11th and maybe a prospect, or maybe an 11th and maybe another pick, a second or third rounder. Or are you trading for Trouba himself? Because if you're trading for Trouba himself, again, he was correct. You'd have to give up a Ghost, Sanheim, Meyer, more or less likely Ghost, 1 to 2 prospects, and maybe a pick. So so I think right now with the Hayes deal, that opened my eyes saying, oh, cool, Trouba might be coming. So if they could lock Hayes up early, but then there comes a point. Would the Flyers risk trading for his rights and not have a sign and trade in place? If there's a sign and trade in place, then I think Ghost would have to be involved in that. And Ghost to me is the odd man out right now. I'll leave it there. Yeah. Because anything could happen. But I am praying from the heavens that it's Jakob Trouba. I really am.
He's my top choice.
Would that make this team a contender? No, not with just the addition of Hayes and Trouba. They'd be a playoff team for sure. Contender? I don't know. I'd have to see a little more. I'm not saying that they, at some point throughout the season, how we see them go, they might be able to reach that point. But to start the season, at the very least, I don't think that with these 2 acquisitions, I don't think would make them a contender. I think that playoffs, yes, but contender, not so much.
All right, well, guys, we've hit up against the limit here. For what I was kind of shooting for, and also I'm starving, so I want to get some dinner in me. But I really appreciate you guys being coming on the show tonight, the first show back since I think late November. So trying to get things up and running again. It's fun to get together in the off season. Like we were saying, there's a lot of stuff potentially in the off season that can help the Flyers going forward that are really going to make a difference. So just real quick again. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Just remind everybody where they can find your stuff again, Yariv.
Yeah, again, you can find me on Twitter at Wolok and pretty much all social media. My stuff's posted on Philly Sports Network. My articles will be out probably more during the season, more written articles. A lot through the summer. I'm going to do more videos. I'm going to try to grow that as much as possible. I will tweet out that myself, but also Philly Sportsnet will tweet it out. Look for kind of myself just kind of doing dialogue about different topics, so more of that to come. And follow all of Philly Sports Network. And thank you again, Kevin. Really appreciate you inviting us on. And love talking hockey 24/7. Really happy to talk to you finally on a podcast and get going with this. So thank you again, and I hope the podcast blows up.
Absolutely. Jamey.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kevin, for having me on. It's been an honor. And you can find me at phillysportsnetwork.com, or you can find me at Jamey Baskow on Twitter. But follow at Austin Mitchell. You can follow Yariv Wolok, Derek Bob, John Govey, who does amazing prospect work. That's our prospect guru. And boy, is he nailing the draft. We're all nailing the draft. And you can follow Ryan Boyd as well. And our photographer, Alex McIntyre, is now part of Premier Lacrosse, which is great for that. But you know what? Our draft profile continues, and that will continue up until the draft. My mock draft comes out Monday, so I'm looking forward to that. But Kevin, it's been an honor. Yariv, it's been an honor. You both are great people, and the viewers, you guys are great people too. Without you guys, honestly, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have credentials for the Phantoms. We wouldn't have credentials for the Flyers. All these luxuries that, necessarily were given for better coverage wouldn't happen because of you guys. So I love you all very much.
All right. Well, fantastic. And again, thanks to the fans for supporting the Flyers and hopefully supporting the podcast. We'll keep people posted as to when the next show is going to be, who might be my guests on that show. I will be posting this podcast probably sometime tomorrow morning, and we'll go from there. Thanks, everybody, and have a great night.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin.